Hi everyone, it's Jeff from Press. Hope you're all well, hope your games are going good. What I'm going to cover today is we're going to take a quick peek at the Swords and Wizardry, the revised core rulebook. They've just had a Kickstarter. I'm part of that Kickstarter. I've got a copy of the new rulebook out. I thought I'd give you a look at it. Just briefly, for those who don't know, Swords and Wizardry is an OSR game. It's brought out by Matt Finch and Mythmere Games. Matt Finch, you should remember, creator of Osric, one of the writers of Osric, large history in the OSR. Swords and Wizardry as a rule set has been out since the early 2000s. There's a lot of material out there. This is a revised version of that rulebook that I'm going to give you a peek at now. Just before I go and have a look, one of the things I'll say about this, it's based on the 5e, the SRD, the Creative Commons SRD that came out. So it's not based on the OGL. So it's one of the first ones of the new Creative Commons versions of OSR games. And that makes it very, very important. Overall, I haven't had a history with this system, but I'm moving towards it. Want to move away from the OGL, want to move away from traditional D&D. I want to support third-party publishing and publishers. So let's go and take a peek at the new revised core rulebook from Swords and Wizardry. Okay, so we go and have a look at the screen. I've just pulled it up on my computer here. So at the moment, the Kickstarter, only the PDF has come out. So you'll see it here. It's got your nice, well-organized menu down the side here. This is a one-stop shop, folks. So you get it's like Osric, you get your player's guide, you get all your ref information, how to play, gameplay examples, spells, everything, monsters, all the referee material, treasure, everything in the one book. So we're looking at just under 150 pages. It's very concise, very easy to read. Black and white traditional OSR format. Nice table of contents at the start. One of the things I like about this, I used to do this when I used to do a lot of publication work. It's an active table of contents for the digital version. So you can actually just click on this table of contents and it's going to jump straight to the pages. Okay, so if we start out, this is designed for players, really. As soon as you get into the introduction, there's a character sheet. And obviously there's a form field character sheet. So you can type into the form fields. Really, really interesting the way it's done. That's nice. And obviously it's a two-pager. Info notes if you've got a spell user, thieving abilities, all that sort of stuff. So this video is going to talk in familiar terms with those that know about Advanced Dungeons & Dragons and the organisation. So this Swords and Wizardry is based on the OD&D, so it predates Expert, Basic and 1E as a genesis of rules, and obviously that's mapped into the new Creative Commons format. So some of the language and stuff is different, like ancestry and things. You're not seeing race, so some of that stuff is slightly different, and it's not hard to navigate, right? It's really easy to get used to. So starting up, you've got the getting started. You move straight in and it points to where in the character sheet things are. So if you've got players who aren't familiar with Dungeons & Dragons or playing a fantasy system, it's sort of, they can just roll straight into it. That's quite handy. For the older school players, you've got 9 classes: Assassin, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Magic User, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, Thief. So obviously there are some things that are missing that 5e players would have seen, 2e players, but that's a massive range of classes, and it's nice to see the revised core rulebook has such a wide range of classes in it. Swords and Wizardry's gone through, I think, about 5 variants, and they've improved and whatever, but some of the variations have been very narrow, like I think down to 4 classes, just the basic core ones. So this has 9 classes. All of the levels are attached to the classes themselves. It's not like some of the early Dungeons & Dragons versions where you're leveled up in your race. Your levels are attached to your actual classes. So you can flick through them there. You can just give it a quick look. Ancestry is your races. So the options are dwarf, elf, halfling, and humans. There's no gnomes under this system. That's still a really wide range. One of the things about Swords and Wizardry, there's always a lot of options and nuances available. So if you're going to referee a game, and we call referees not GMs or DMs in Swords and Wizardry, a game master really has to identify what rules and which variations they're playing to their players, so there's no ambiguity later on. So one of my tips is, if you're going to manage a Swords and Wizardry game and you're refereeing it, look through the book, decide which optional options you are, note them down, and give that message to your players up front right at the start, so they know what optional rules you're using, what not. For example, there's a thing called continued advancement. So a lot of non-human races have level caps. In this, there's an optional rule that says, no, they can keep doing it, but they've got to pay at least twice the XP. And you can vary that around to suit yourself. That's a fantastic option, really good for non-human ancestry background. Okay, so you've got your standard equipment stuff, you've got armor and weapons. One thing that's really good about the Swords and Wizardry rules is language. So in a lot of the early rule books and systems, understanding how things worked and understanding the order in which things were done could be quite complicated to read. This doesn't have that within it. It's quite well organized. So if we look at the melee weapons chart, for example, clearly identifies what are two-handed weapons and what aren't. And if there's an option there, if you've got a one-handed weapon and you want to use it two-handed like a bastard sword or even a spear, you can do that and you get extra bonuses. So it's a nice simple way, and it's this clear and crisp identification of how things work that's really, really important. And it's nice to see in the revised rulebook. And while we're on this page, the other thing to note about Swords and Wizardry, with, like I said, with the options, is your AC. You can work in two ways. You can do an ascending AC, which is sort of like 5e, where the numbers just keep stacking up. Or you can do the traditional AD&D. You've got negatives. So in this case, it goes -9 to +9. One D&D was -10 to +10. So you can run your AC one way or the other. So like I said about telling players how you're running at the start, you might just ask around and say, which way do you want to run it, girls and guys? You know, how do you want to play this today? Ascending, descending, doesn't matter. And all the monsters in the book have ascending and descending AC, so you don't have to work it out. All right, so that's all in there. You've got the how to play, really, really easily laid out. 6 steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Surprise, declare spells, determine your initiative, movement, missile fire, melee, round is complete. One thing that might be a bit different in this, step 4, movement and missile fire. If you've got missiles in hand, off you go before the melee attacks come in. Little bit different and sort of makes sense, you know. If I've got my spear in my hand and we're about to have a run around, I'm chucking it at you before you have a crack at me with your warhammer. I like that. There's optional rules in there. One of the things, like I said about the rules, is the options. There's an alternative combat sequence where initiative is based on dexterity, and the more nimble, quick you are, you're going to go more often than the dinosaur, the brontosaurus, that's bunging around with its giant feet trying to squash it. You're going to get to run around in between their legs and have a crack at them beforehand. That's an interesting way. It's not that much harder to run. It's just going to be different from traditional players who haven't seen a dex-based system for initiative. All your combat tables are in there. There's a quick method for if you're using ascending AC. I'm going to run through this quickly. A game example. That's nice for people who've never played before to understand the flow and the interaction. And that's the thing that makes OSR games. It's that interaction, right? This is what you've got to understand. 5e, you know, my perception roll, you know, I've porked my scores and I've chosen all my races and stacked it, so I've got this great perception. I walk into a room and, geez, I know that's there and I know they're over there and I only have to roll better than a 5 and I've got it. That's not how the old OSR stuff works. You know, I go into a room in an OSR game and I expect the referee to say, well, what are you doing? And your players are going to go, well, I'm I'm going to go over to the wall. What's the wall made out of? Or is there anything I can see in this room? And actually, if I push the bed, does it set anything off? You know, it's a different type of play. That's what these rules allows for, and that's what this example is explaining. Stuff on your magic, you've got your normal charts there, your magic user spells, your cleric spells by level, but you've also got an alphabetical index in here so you can look through. So that's really, really handy to know. And it, like the initial index, it's clickable. So if you find the spell, rather than you having to go to that page, just click on it and it takes me through straight to the spell. And just on that, while we're having a quick look, I'll just zoom in. Spells are really easy. You've got your spell level, your range, you've got your duration, and a really short description. We're not writing 1 page worth of data per spell, right? This is a simple system. You don't have spell components. You don't have this massive array of things you have to do to crack a spell off. And on that note as well, one of the things about this system in that simplicity model is that training to go up levels. Once you've got the XP, bang, you're off. You don't do training per se. You could implement that if you wanted to in the system, but you would have to alter your treasure amounts and all that. It predicates, and the mechanics is built on, you get to your level, you've got your XP, you unlock that understanding in your head. So that is there as well. So if we keep moving through, you've got your spells, monsters in the dungeon, challenge level. So monsters have a challenge level, and that helps you determine what is better for low level players and higher level players, and there's tables there for that. If we move quickly, just to an example of, why don't we have a look at Orcus? There he is, the Demon Prince. So the standard stat block for a monster: hit dice, AC, attacks, saving throws, morale, special, all the special powers, move, alignment, and the number encountered in lair. The challenge level, so just so you know, Orcus, level 40. Yeah, really interesting stuff. Pretty good array of monsters in there. I've seen Matt Fitch talk about the possibility, once the Kickstarter's out, the look at expanding on the revised rules. I imagine there'll be maybe some player option book out there, or maybe even a monster book. If you think you're short of monsters, there's a lot in there, but remember, any of the old, so in this case, I have the monstrosities. Any of the earlier sort of monster books that are compatible will fit in. The only thing you're going to be missing from a monster point of view and from a stat point of view with the new revised rulebook is morale. So there's a morale value. So you'll see I mark it in here with the doppelganger. There's a morale based system. I love this because I think one of the things about combat is you can defeat a monster without physically killing the monster. Morale is a mechanism that allows that to happen, and it just makes sense. You know, I'm attacking a group of monsters. They're not always going to fight to the death, and having that mechanism is, some D&D's referees used to play that into a game anyway. Oh, the monsters of 3, you know, there's only 2 of them left out of the 50, so they bugger off, you know. A lot of people put that in just off the top of their head. This system with the morale in there allows you to do that. So the revised book has morale in. So that's a bit different from the other Swords and Wizardry, which I don't think had that in there. So you've got a massive monster section there. You can see it. Coming out of that, there's a creating monsters section. So if you want to build up your own monsters, monster types to go into your system, it gives you a range of which sort of challenge level your monster will come in, depending on the powers that you've given it, and it lets you allocate in the tables there, the rating. There's a generating treasure system, which I really, really like, and basic, so you work out your monster kill in the terms of GP worth of monster kill, and then your treasure's attributed on that. And treasure seems to me, the way it's organised, it's more of a, we kill certain things, and then we find a bundle of treasure, rather than every monster has a little accounted amount with them. Tends to make more sense. I like it. and then it's just the pages of magic down the back. So hope that's given you an overview of the revised Swords and Wizardry core rulebook. It's out on Kickstarter. One of the things, I'll just flick the page up here. It's Mythmere Games. Go to Mythmere Games. Keep your eye on it. Obviously, the books will eventually come up on their site and the rules will come up on their site. For those of you who don't know what Swords and Wizardry is, hopefully this has given you a version, an introduction to it. So it's basically, it predates 1E. It's the old OD&D books that the system is based on. It's a very simple, basic system that has been written and organised into a rule book that flows easily. It's easy to understand, nice introduction for new players, and just a nice, simple way to play fantasy role-playing games. And at the end, that is what you're looking for. And this is a system that's going to have longevity because it's not based on the OGL. So if some unnamed particular party wanted to come out and have a crack at it again, it wouldn't matter because we're operating under Creative Commons with this rule set. All right, as always, stay safe, happy gaming. See ya.